Obviously, some of us don't really think gold is relevant, but other people have got a different view. They even work for the World Gold Council, Hannah. So thank you for joining us. I know you were probably sent by John, but we are very happy to have you facilitate the conversation. We're actually sick and tired of John Reid and some of his views, so you're in a good place. Yeah? I mean, really, no pressure.
I'll try my best.
Yeah, well, you tell him what I said as well. No.
I will.
So over to you. We've got 35 minutes to talk about gold, which blows my mind because either you're smart enough to buy gold or you're dumb enough and you buy cryptos. I don't know what else, but try and make a topic of gold and let's see where it goes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Yes, I mean, as Bernard already said, gold has already come up. But I think let's continue where they left it off. So we've had a very high gold price this year. We had a record high gold price in May, $2,450 an ounce. And what was interesting is that, you know, the typical factors, the US dollar, the interest rates environment, less significant, but more so central banks buying, strong demand for physical gold in Asia, and of course, you know, wide range of geopolitical environment that has really driven that price. Gold mining shares have not had the same experience. So let's start there. What does this disconnect mean for your businesses? I don't know, Peter, do you want to start off?
Yeah, I'm probably the wrong person to talk because we actually had a fantastic run in the share price. During that period, on a year basis, I mean, Harmony was the best performing stock on the JSE, on a total JSE, that's all stock. And obviously from a gold perspective, in worldwide, we were at the best things. I think the big thing, the disconnect in a certain way, is that we managed to improve the quality of our assets over the time, added in the last number of years, about 50% on the production. Much better quality, higher grade, managed to get our unit cost down, which in any other areas there was obviously inflation pressures on other companies. And and actually have a very clear, you know, pathway in terms of creating this long-term future for us until 2040 at least, in terms of creating, you know, with the projects that we have in the pipeline. So we actually had a different view on that. So and I think we got rewarded for being a consistent performer and obviously improving our costs. So that and shareholders still, you know, came to us and bought those shares.
So would you say it kind of can help as well when you, especially if you think of, you know, the attention that gold is getting, if you think about new investment opportunities and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely so. And obviously also we brought a little bit of a copper story into our business now with Eva Copper and also with Wafi Golpu. So yeah, I think in all, you know, it was I think the investors rewarded us for what we've done in the last number of years.
Peter, won't you take your mic out of your collar?
Okay, will that work?
I mean, you sound like you're about to do an opera here for us. I mean,
will do. Good.
A bit down. Is it uncomfortable?
No, it's good. No, it's fine.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's right. I heard him just fine, but sorry if you didn't hear him.
I'll just swing my chair a bit.
Martin, what are your views on that?
Oh, I think as you know, well documented evidence is that sort of rise in the gold price not tracked and mirrored by sort of overall sort of, you know, equity market prices across the board. Look, from a sentiment perspective, I think there's a couple of factors that have possibly weighed on us a little bit. Having said that, we touched about 78 to 80 pence second half of last year, and today up to sort of £1.15. So clearly a strong relative share price performance over the last 6 months for Centamin. But you know, why haven't we tracked higher given the current record gold prices? We're just coming out of a reinvestment phase that's just about finished now. And I think there's been a little bit of people just sitting on the sideline waiting to see the results of that reinvestment. And we're now heading into that strong free cash flow period. So I think that has been sort of one of the catalysts in people looking at us particularly. I think on a geopolitical basis, obviously the terrible situation in Israel and Gaza right now, I think the BBC have been very good at pointing out where Egypt sits in relation geographically to that particular region. And I think a bit of regional sort of caution, shall we say, around that. it hasn't had an impact on the operation day to day as well. But I think that a strong performance from Centamin, as we say, we're now sort of delivering into those plans, possibly held back a little bit by waiting for the sort of access to free cash now, which is second half of this year, and as I say, just maybe a little bit of sort of regional stability concerns as well. But as I say, not an impact on us.
Terry, what are your views, and I guess what are your considerations when you think about these issues, the current gold price balanced against your longer term pricing consideration and commitments?
Well, if you look at long-term pricing, we still are using 1850, and I know that number is starting to change almost on a monthly basis by $50 going up. So by the end of the year, we'll have some scratching of our heads to think about what next year's prices should be. Certainly, if the gold price stays where it is, we think there's a new floor at 2,000, but we're not getting too excited about it. I think essentially Resolute has been a turnaround story after the last 3 years, and we've got a lot of skeptics out there still to prove, and that really is based on us doing what we say we're going to do, which is produce gold slightly cheaper. And we're starting to pick up a bit of momentum on that, given that we are systematically reducing our costs. We've come from a high cost base, make no mistake, but we are really focused on our costs, and based on history, I think most of us in this room have seen the gold prices climb and drop pretty quickly. The key is do not lose sight of your costs. Don't resist the temptation of drastically reducing your cut-off grades, so you maintain your margin as a percentage. And if you're going to spend a bit of extra money, spend it with the drill bit, because I think that's where you gain the most value. But again, don't overdo that. Don't drill out for 15 years in the future. So for us, we very much business as usual, but really focusing hard on our costs. And like Martin said, we're just enjoying the cash flow starting to come in now.
I think maybe, Terry, one of the things that we've seen in the sector over the years is that I think the key word is discipline. Higher prices, let's drop the cut-off, let's produce more ounces at a marginal, not additional extra cash flow. You've seen the pump up we're now producing an extra 50,000 ounces a year, brilliant, but ultimately at no additional marginal cash flow generation and no return for shareholder or reinvestment opportunity. So I think you're exactly right. Focus on production at the right part of the cost curve and enjoy the benefit of this. And as you say, reinvest. I think asset scarcity is still one of the main things. We've been busy the last 2 years looking at opportunity across the gold space in Africa. And I think we're seeing the legacy now of 5 to 7 years ago of a lack of exploration investment. We're not seeing that pipeline coming through. Or you're seeing the pipeline come through in some, emerging and challenging environments in terms of, jurisdictional political risk as well. So I think the watchword, Terry, I think is for us as Centamin and certainly the signs of you at Resolute as well. But I think more broadly for the gold sector has got to be discipline.
Yeah.
Would you agree on the exploration?
No, 100%. This is exactly what we also follow in Harmony. We don't follow the gold price in terms of dropping cut-offs, going into areas that is lower grade. We obviously have ample of that. But we also have the scars on the back of doing that in the past. So we certainly don't do that. So we really are very conservative in our view. Normally look at the last 3 years, look at that, and obviously a conservative consensus view of what we've got and before we make it. We're just in the process of completing the planning process now for our new financial year. We're not, following the gold price, and it, of course, making 100% sure that that the things that we actually develop in the long term are the things that are actually going to be even a lower gold price will still have a fairly good margin.
And are you looking at your existing assets, or are you looking further afield when you think about exploration and development of assets?
Yeah, we obviously looking at both. I mean, we look at obviously the extending of our current assets. We look at our projects that we approved now is really the high margin projects, doing the surface retreatment, the high grade operations we bought from AngloGold Ashanti. They all have now, with the projects being completed, will have a more than 20-year life of mine. But also looking at greenfields, for instance, Eva Copper and Wafi-Golpu, but then potentially looking at, which is very difficult in the current gold price environment and copper price environment, to find value accretive, acquisitions. But we've got enough to develop, so we are quite happy to do that.
Right. And what are other questions that investors are asking you? I know at the World Gold Council we always get asked, more and more questions around, what standards should we look at, especially also from rating agencies. There are so many mining standards out there. Rowan mentioned earlier that, the Copper Mark, the ICMM, World Gold Council, and TSM are trying to consolidate a standard. Is that something that is important to you, or you get asked, or what questions do you get asked from investors that are not necessarily just specific about your operations, but maybe wider?
Yeah, I think we always get questions on our ESG strategy and where we want to go. And I think getting a more global standard in place that everyone conform to will be much more helpful. We're not a member of the ICMM or the World Gold Council as a company. We've been always looking. We was a much smaller company at the time, and potentially now we have to look a little bit more to make sure that we have the right level of assurance and standards. We obviously apply all the standards that the right standards in all our businesses, really are very, very focused on that. Then, of course, very importantly, I think this question is always on our decarbonization, where we are. And, we are targeting to have about 2027 a 25% reduction through renewables. We are a very highly a user of the ESCOM power. I mean, we probably never be able to walk away from that because of our base load that we have to have, and we do a lot of pumping, refrigeration, cooling of our areas. So that's quite a it's not so easy to move away from that, but we have a clear pathway where we want to go, and so those questions are in place, and of course I think importantly to get your original part of the questions is if there's one standard that most people follow, we'd like to be part of that, that process. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Peter. I think when we look at the sort of relatively embryonic sort of ESG reporting frameworks that we're seeing now coming out there. I mean, as a company, we're London listed. We've got a diverse investor base, predominantly UK and North America. As you say, there's a myriad of different sort of systems and sort of measurements. There's different rating agencies out there now as well. And I think for us, it's trying to sort of compile or present our data in such a way that it ticks as many boxes as possible, because it becomes quite an exercise in terms of collating that data, analysing it and pumping it out there. Then you've got to make sure that those rating agencies are actually got your data correctly and it's being pushed out as well. So I think if there's from a company perspective, the good thing would be to see a harmonization of reporting standards. I think that would be good if we could get to that. And then there's a kind of an ability to do an apples comparison between relative companies within the sector, within the commodity, maybe across the broader mining sector. And I think that would sort of, aid both investors, stakeholders more generally, and the companies as well. But, that's obviously a bit of a pipe dream now with all these various sort of, interests around how they want to have their own particular reporting sort of regimes. And I think the other sort of emerging area, which I think is quite interesting, is around that assurance. You can go and get your account signed off by one of the big four, and that's fine. They have that reputation. Who does that auditing for that sort of that work as well now? And again, it's publication to standards, and then it's that verification process so that the broader sort of stakeholder community can understand and have the sort of a fair representation of where a business is or isn't, as the case may be. I think that would make all our lives significantly easier. Yeah. There's some of our investors are in the room, so I have to say they're all very intelligent questions we get asked on a very regular basis, and they're very, very good indeed. But yeah, I think that from our perspective, having that sort of unified approach would just, I think, simplify the situation for everybody.
Terry, would you agree, or anything to add to that?
I would tend to agree totally there. ESG is starting to become prominent. We are an Australian domiciled company, but we do have a listing in Australia and in UK. Our share base is 35% Australia, it's about 35% North America and the rest of the world. So we don't have a large shareholding here. But the ESG question is certainly coming up, and yes, we're grappling. We have 5 different audits a year, and we maintain improvements on all of those. Obviously, we're part of the World Gold Council as well, and we're happy with the work there. But it would be good if we had one standard, but I think we're a couple of years away from that.
Well, we're trying our best to.
Good luck.
Was that a criticism, Terry?
Not at all.
We've touched on ESG, and of course we have to mention. I mean, gold is not a critical mineral, right? And we get asked often, what is the purpose of gold? What's the value? But it is like we always say. Look, gold mining is really critical in the countries where you operate and for the communities and the host countries. So, Terry, back to you. what's Resolute doing? How are you working in the communities? How are you creating value?
I think, if you look at our Malian operation, that's been on the ground since the 90s, and we've worked with that community there through the last 25 years. We now have senior managers in the operation that are from the communities. They went through the first kindergarten that BHP put together all those years ago. And we're starting to we've got 2 females now in our management team from the local villages. So and that is a challenge in itself. And I think you can appreciate in that part of the world, the man is the breadwinner. It's very difficult to get the females through the ranks in West Africa. But we are managing it, and that takes time to get that message and get the communities on side. We've just, with the turnaround on the project, we had to let go of a lot of people, and we didn't have strikes because we had such good relationships with the communities. However, they also bought into the longer term. Now we've fixed the mine, we can expand. And now we're in the process working with them as interested and affected parties. And I think all that work that we've put in is benefiting us and benefiting the country now that we're getting things done rather quickly. But you can see when we go into the communities, I mean, we're operating on the edge of the Sahara. Even though we're 25 years in, we're still building roads. We don't seem to get away from that, a lot of that infrastructural stuff. There's a lot of roads still required. We're still busy. We're setting up businesses from the local communities to actually manage those now. But I would say that the bottom line is that the communities are supporting us, given that we've got a future plan. They're fully aware of it, and they've bought into it. And that is a huge benefit, I think, of working very, very closely with the community. And I do think that, Evie Hambro said that gold is a force for good. I think you quoted it a couple of weeks ago. I think that's a very good statement, because we are out in some pretty remote areas and working with villages that otherwise would have no water, no clean water, they'd have no education, etc. But with our operation being there 30 years, you'd be surprised what sort of sophistication you can get from the local workforce now.
Maybe just to add the concept, we operate obviously South Africa and Papua New Guinea. We employ 45,000 people. That's obviously probably the biggest contributor we do to the local economy, or all the people, the taxes that they pay, quite a significant amount. When we look at for South Africa, we calculated in the last financial year, our contribution to the GDP was about 44.3 billion rand. So it's quite significant. We've been operating for over 70 years in South Africa, so the towns that we operate was actually built around the mines. So the community there are fully integrated with the mines, and creating that opportunities and jobs in that area is obviously critical for the country and for that particular communities. Having said that, we also are, we have of course so-called SLPs in South Africa. We're in the 4th generation of that, where we do specific projects that we agree with the government that we would do, which is quite significant in the areas that we operate.
SLP is social labour plan, just for the non-South African audience. So it's a
social labour plan, yes, we call it. And Bernard still remember those things. So vaguely. So, I mean, it's important that, and through that, we also develop a lot of, transformation of our suppliers. I mean, it's actually what we call about, more than half of our suppliers now fully transformed, about more than 50% of the historically disadvantaged South Africans, as we call them. And so, a lot of transformation takes place over time, etc. So, and the same would we do for PNG. I mean, most of the suppliers of services in PNG are obviously local companies, and so quite important for us. So, and we've seen it now. As you close these mines down in those areas, it's actually quite a significant. If they're mined out, there's quite a significant impact there. So we try and obviously to prolong the life of mine. And I think Harmony as a company over time has built a very strong brand in South Africa as the company that actually took over the operations and recapitalized them and mined them for many, many years. When we finally closed Unicell mine, I think it was in 1997 when Bernard bought it at the time. That mine would have closed down, and we actually closed it down 2 years ago. Finally mined out, the shaft pillar being removed. There's nothing more to my mind. And I think, that we get a lot of credit for as a company.
And Martin, when we think about the value that gold miners create, and maybe also how unique gold is in terms of if we can decarbonize, at the mine site level, we can kind of eventually decarbonize gold because there's so few Scope 3 emissions associated with gold. And there's a benefit that comes from, bringing renewable energy to often very remote places. So I don't know if you want to touch about what you're doing in Egypt.
Sure. Yeah. Look, just to maybe just before we move on to that, just to sort of, what Peter and Terry say there. Look, I think, any mining development, gold in our case, done properly can be a real engine for development within, developing countries, be it on the national economy front through royalties and taxation, local employment, skills training and so on, infrastructure development. I think the key really is, as we've come to learn over the years, is that making sure that those benefits aren't just tied to the mine life. We deplete ore bodies, mines close, into the legacy that you can leave beyond that mine life as well. And I think that when you're looking to do projects that benefit from the cash flows that we generate, trying to think about that legacy beyond the mine life as well if you're in a remote location as well. So I think that's a sort of further refinement now as we go forward. In terms of decarbonisation, we're very lucky in Egypt. It's about the best place in the world for solar irradiance. A couple of years ago, we built a 36 megawatt solar plant, and that displaced around about 30 megawatts AC of our 50 megawatt draw. So that means that during sort of 8 to 10 hours a day, about 3/5 of our power comes from solar. In real terms, what does that mean? That's about 20 million litres of diesel that we've displaced, which is about 60,000 tonnes of carbon equivalent, and about $18 to $20 million to the bottom line as well. So as a project, when you sort of sit there and think about that from a business perspective, huge operational savings, reduced volatility in our cost base because we're now removing the oil price risk. The sun shines, it's free as well. And then we think about the decarbonisation as well, which is also a huge benefit from the sector as well. So that's something that we put in place, and it was commissioned in late 22, and that's been a huge success. And we're currently evaluating moving to a 50 megawatt overall facility with expansion, and leaving us to effectively run fully on solar during daylight hours as well. So that is one of the benefits of Egypt, to be fair, at the Red Sea. That's probably not as applicable in, say, Manchester, Terry, but certainly from an Egyptian perspective, is very good. And I think it links very nicely. You asked before about investor focus, and I think decarbonisation is always top of the list in terms of investor questions, alongside gender equality and general sort of environmental standards. But I'd say decarbonisation certainly seems to be pretty near the top of the tree in terms of those investor concerns as well. We're developing a project now in northern Côte d'Ivoire called Doropo. Again, Côte d'Ivoire has a good power distribution network, significant portion of hydro within that. And if we bring that project forward, we will actually build a 90 kilometre power line into the region. And that obviously will be for our benefit, but will then effectively electrify as currently unelectrified sort of region of Côte d'Ivoire as well. So again, that sort of engine of development there through the gold sector to basically sort of uplift on a long-term basis a fairly sort of rural and underdeveloped part of Côte d'Ivoire as well. So we've got a big responsibility, as a sector. We've got to think about those environmental impacts and minimising those and maximising those long-term benefits to our stakeholders and broader community.
And Terry, decarbonising is not always easy. And I know, do you want to touch a little bit on
Yes,
the
certainly.
Challenges that come with that
Certainly,
as well?
Being a remote mines, that's our two mines are fairly remote. It is a big challenge, carbon. We are heavily reliant on fossil fuels at this point in time. However, we've just put a 10 megawatt battery into the Syama operation, so we can shut down some spinning reserve diesel generators and save a bit of power there. And we are looking seriously now at solar, given we finally closed down our main tailings dam that's started by BHP. We're looking at fitting that out with solar. And as Martin is saying, literally within 10 kilometres over the fence line, there is a lot of hydropower coming in from Côte d'Ivoire, and there's a lot of it freely available. We're just trying to negotiate, and we've only just started trying to negotiate the two countries to talk on that. There are lines through
Not ahead
into
of us, not ahead of us, Terry.
No, sorry?
Not ahead of us.
No. Together we're going to go and talk to the Côte d'Ivoire.
Right.
But, there's a huge resource there, and there's one or two mines closing down close to us on the other side of the fence in the next couple of years, so we're looking to try and capitalise on that. But it is a big challenge with remote operations. I think the important thing is to do things more efficiently. For example, in Senegal, we purchased the power plant that a contractor was operating for us. And when we audited the power plant, we found it was only operating at 75% efficiency instead of 86. And most of that was because of climate change, because the ambient air temperatures were originally designed for 42, they're at 46, 48 now. So the incoming air had to be cooled to get those efficiencies back up. So we're doing little bits and pieces, but the main one would be if we could tap into the Côte d'Ivoire for the Syama operation as part of the expansion.
Interesting. I mean, Peter, also in South Africa, there were some challenges. I think it's improved a bit. Anything you want to add to kind of overcoming some of these challenges and lessons learned, I guess?
Yeah, I think in South Africa we had a history of very, very cheap electricity. For that reason, we were very inefficient. So that we've worked on very, very hard to bring that inefficiency down. And if we look at our run rate in terms of carbon emissions, about 1.8 tons of carbon emissions that we're actually being able to reduce over time. But then, of course, we have built our first 30 megawatt plant, a solar plant. We are busy in the process now to build another 137. So that is, will be completed within a year or two from now, probably the end of next year. And so it is a big issue for us. But again, we said that we we are very dependent on base load. Having said, look at the power situation in South Africa. We've been very fortunate that last 3 months we had no load shedding, load curtailment. But I can never say, even at the peak of that we ever had an impact on our business. We managed to through that. We got we obviously on load curtailment, so we make the choice where we're going to cut and how we're going to save. So we kind of found a way to cut back on what's required on a 10 or 20% at times, and then still be able to continue with our operations. We are very fortunate as a company that we've probably have old infrastructure or very previously built for much bigger mines, so we have redundancy and pumping and other kind of things that we can play around with on the operations to be able to cut back what is required at the time. Not easy, but we got through that. So we never used load curtailment as an excuse for non-performance. So.
All right, we've got about 5 minutes left, so I kind of want to stay on this kind of topic of challenges, but maybe also opportunities. And I think I always look at a challenge or the big challenge that the industry is facing is the question around talent. How do we attract the next generation of gold miners? Also still, how do we get more women into businesses and help them, stay at the businesses and progress? You might think of some other challenges, but I would love to hear from you, A, how do you think we can attract the next generation? And then B, anything else that are challenges that we can turn into opportunities?
3 middle-aged white men on a stage being asked that question. I think that's probably endemic with the industry, isn't it, right now, unfortunately? Look, I think it really is the challenge, I think, in terms of that next generation. Mining more generally, and I think gold specifically as well. I think a younger generation is a lot more socially conscious. I think they think a lot more around sort of environmental issues and decarbonisation and so on. And I think explaining the case for gold mining, I think it's important to attract people into the sector as well. And I think we've got to think about how we position ourselves for that sort of younger generation talent to consider us as a sector to go to. I think that's part of the challenge. I think from a UK-centric perspective, we've got to think about, we don't teach it as much as we used to. A number of schools have closed down in the UK as well. And how do we do that? I mean, I was at Leeds University, but Camborne itself now is only just reintroducing a part-time mining degree. So how do we sort of, develop and sort of train that next generation? One, attract them and then train them certainly from a UK perspective as well. So I think that is certainly one of the major challenges as we go forward. I think mining's broader role within the decarbonisation sort of requirements is clearly the hook to hang it on. But I think with the subsector of gold, we've got to sort of position ourselves within that. On a gender basis, we actually have just, there was a change in the mining law in Egypt a couple of years ago, and we introduced sort of a number of sort of female positions across the mine site. I've got to be honest, as a white middle-aged European working in effectively a North African Arabic setting, I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, quite frankly. Delighted to say it's been a huge success. I think we've gone from 0 to 40 full-time professional female employees. We're not looking at sort of trying to game the system and bringing in catering, housekeeping. We're talking genuine professional appointments. I think the sort of the workforce, the Egyptian workforce, the predominantly male, obviously, have been incredibly welcoming. If there's been resistance, dare I say it's been on an age basis, that maybe some of the older members of the team have been a little bit more resistant, but that probably applies to this country as well. And generally, we've found it to be a huge success as well. So I think if you provide that opportunity, I think it is possible to do these things. And of course, we need to do that effectively as we go forward.
Terry?
I think we're pretty unique where we are at the moment in West Africa. There's a lot of skills there. The gold mining's been going on for 20 years. A lot of those skills migrated or have been in Tanzania, and a lot of them are coming back to West Africa. But also, I think that I think we're very excited by the fact that in the emerging economies generally, mining is seen as a glamorous industry. It's really in London, Australia maybe not so much, but North America it's not seen to be so glamorous. But there, the people are very proud to wear the shirt and the badge, and they want to improve their position. So we started opening our, over the last 18 months, we've started opening some of our senior positions to people that, the one superintendent there, he actually, as an engineer, he was on the mine when it started in 97. He's got a huge amount of experience, never been exposed to any managerial experience. We put him through a bit of a crash course, and he's performing very well. And that's an example to the rest of the people there. So we don't have an acute problem. I would suggest where the problem would come in when we start looking at serious expansions. That's where you're going to get those skills from. That's really a challenge. But generally, over the last 2 years, we've reduced our expats, for example, from 140 down to 60 fairly quickly. And we've brought nationals up, either coming back into the West Africa or from already there in the operations into those positions. And the productivities are improving. It's pretty simple.
I think also on Terry's page, in South Africa, it is the prestigious job to work in a mine, and we don't find any, problems to find the right skills or the right talent to actually join the mining industry through bursary schemes. We've got 3 very good mining schools in South Africa. They are well populated, so we don't necessarily have an issue in terms of attracting talent. I think importantly is also the culture of the company. As you build the culture in terms of being, care and respect for people, that is very important, and that's what we've been driving very, very hard in the last number of years. We've seen, people that, for some other reason, leave Harmony, come back very quickly, except for Bernard, that didn't come back. So we've seen I think that culture has been very strong in South Africa for Harmony. People want to work with us. And then, of course, women in mining, we've been a long journey with that. I think seen not only because it's always very quick to have women in managerial positions, but one of the examples last year, the best shift boss in Harmony, been rated as the top shift boss in Harmony, was a woman. So that's a lower generation, low level in the organization. And well integrated, part of all the management processes, and also obviously part of the teams. It's been a journey, not an easy one maybe, but it was a journey that we now are well embedded in Harmony.
Hannah,
Great.
I'm taking back over from you.
Yes, please do.
I'm not a body language expert, but the way she's excluded me, I have taken serious offense. And I know what is behind it. I mean, John Reed told that in the good old days, when the World Gold Council was this executive travel club, some CEO refused to contribute to those fees. And now it's payback time. Now I get treated like this. Hey, I'm going to get over it now. Peter, there's cynical comments. I mean, but look at this audience, young people here. I'm going to read you 2 comments, and you can just perhaps give a brief answer. Let me paraphrase the 2 comments. So, I mean, environmentally or sustainably, you guys you mine gold, and then it goes back in a vault. And similarly, with future-focused minerals, I mean, what the hell is the role of gold in all of this? So everybody else have got a compelling case. And you guys, what are you doing? Why are you mining this stuff and put it back in the vault?
Yeah, well, I think our compelling case has been there for centuries. So everybody wants wealth, and I think and gold has been perceived as wealth. And And yes, I think if you want to look at what's happening currently in the world, there's obviously the dollar, and dollar is a world currency. There's a lot of, I think, polarization as far as geopolitical things are concerned. And you've seen a massive amount of gold being bought as a storage of wealth by central banks. And that has been driving this gold price for the last couple of years. But there's also, when gold do have some sort of industrial value, there's a lot of things, and will increase going forward if you want to look at the technology that will develop over time. But it is really about creating the wealth and doing that. And then for many, many years, that has been the way to do it. And I think increasingly going forward, it's going to happen better because there's no alternative like world currency other than the US dollar. So it's going to be, the gold is going to be the other one.
If I knew who asked those cynical questions, I would have probably said to that young person, and what are you going to do at your wedding? Are you going to hand over a Bitcoin wallet? But like I say, I'm showing my age. So can I ask you three guys, who of you still use cyanide as part of your extraction technology? And there's a specific question about, are we ever going to see extraction of gold without cyanide? Is there any technology breakthrough imminent? Peter?
I can say, of course, we do use cyanide, and there are technologies that's being developed at the moment to try and, walk away from cyanide. They're still in the early phases, but I think very encouraging. But we still do use cyanide in our processes, and obviously we put it on the dumps, which is now lime and everything else, and so we try and contain that. And obviously where we had these old legacy dumps, I think a fantastic opportunity to have the circular economy to bring them back, retreat them, make money, and actually put them in areas where we can be stored responsibly.
Terry?
Yes, we do use cyanide. And in a previous position, I actually built a pilot plant for one of the alternatives, but the technology is just not there yet. In a beaker on the laboratory shelf, yes, it looks good. You put it into continuous operation. It doesn't work anywhere as near as efficient as the cyanide. And we have a duty, if we're going to mine the gold, to extract the maximum that we can get out of the ground.
And if, let's say worldwide cyanide was regulated, like you can't use it, would that technology then be adequate? It's just too expensive? I'm just testing the...
It would hike the gold price up a little bit. Probably put another $100 on the price. As it stands right now. That's my take on it, but I haven't looked at it closely over the last 2 years.
Martin, can I take you to the issue of partnership? Are you still in a 50-50 partnership with the government of Egypt?
Yes, we are.
And talk about partnership for developing mines in Africa.
Look, I
as
think
a model.
He's not here with us today. He's not dead, is he? He's not here with us today. It sounds very dramatic. I was going to talk about Bristow, but I think he's banged that drum for a number of years now around that genuine sort of stakeholder partnership approach. And to be successful for the long term, you have to do that. And whether it's in a profit share arrangement like we have with Egypt, where every dollar that comes out of the mine, we split 50-50 with governments. Very simple, not typical in the mining sector, but very simple and a true partnership approach. We're both aligned as to the outcome for the mine, or whether it's through taxes and then local stakeholder engagement. I think if you want long-term success, and I think Mark has been very clear on this for a number of years, you have to have an equal partnership. There has to be a fair share of risk and reward for both counterparties as well. So we have our agreement with the government, signed into law in 1994. Egypt's been through some troubled times over the years. It's never been challenged. It's worked very successfully and very well. And every week, actually, once we sell the gold to Switzerland, dollars come back on shore, and then our 50% comes back to Topco every week as well. Egypt is very clear around its desire for foreign direct investment. It's very clear around its honouring of contractual obligations with international partners, and they have sort of nice words to say, but we're a lived experience that we've found that sort of partnership with Egypt as well. It's an embryonic industry for them. They're very versed in oil and gas and construction and other things. So there's a bit of an education still ongoing with us, but there's an underlying willingness to make sure that they engage on a partnership basis.
But Peter, partnership could also be about capital. I mean, I haven't recently heard how many $1 billion it will take to develop Wafi or Golpu or whatever the name is now. But surely that's always too big for a single balance sheet.
Yeah, and obviously we haven't updated. The original number was 2.8 billion.
2.8.
2.8, yeah, for the 100%. Obviously we will only own about 35% of that, but that will be a much higher number because that study was done in 2018. We'll see when we get to the point that the SML is granted and we actually do all the feasibility study, how we're going to fund it. There can be partnerships, there can also be offtake agreements, there can be many, many other kind of things that we can do. At the moment, we are generating very, very good cash, and all the other projects most likely will be completed by the time when Wafi-Golpu come into play, and then we can, obviously focus on that particular project. But yes, it's big numbers, and partnerships are important. I think in our case, in Wafi-Golpu, it will be a partnership between ourselves, Newmont, and the state mining company. So it's a kind of a three-way marriage that need to work. And I think it's important that the companies find one another and work well together for the sake of developing the project in a proper way.
Probably apart from cobalt, I would say I'm most aware of artisanal illegal mining in the gold sector. Can I ask each one of you to quickly comment about how are you currently experiencing neighbors or intruders, and how do you live with that, Peter?
Yeah, I think we were like in the forefront in South Africa in terms of fighting illegal mining. We've been very successful in closing down the holes that actually allowed illegal minings into the mine.
And this is into underground.
Underground.
Just for the context for the audience, yeah.
So the big issue originally in South Africa was really in the Free State region. We've closed the holes, people moved away. So at the moment we've got very little impact on our business in terms of illegal mining. We have a massive problem with crime. There's been quite a number of attempts to actually steal gold out of our plants, not only in Harmony, but none of them successful at this point in time, not in Harmony at least. So what but the illegal mining process, I think in South Africa has moved more to the old mining areas on the Rand, the East Rand, West Rand, that particular areas where we're not operating at this point in time. So that creates a massive issue but at the moment is really something that the government is dealing with, not necessarily the current companies are dealing with. But the important thing is to rehabilitate quickly, make sure that when we finish with the mine, that it's actually closed down, and we don't have further issues as far as that's concerned.
Terry, any unique challenges in your space with this?
We actually work very well with the artisanal miners in that they are mostly from overseas. From other parts of Africa. And the local communities actually control them, charge them rent, feed them, etc. So there's a business on the ground there. And because of our relationship with the communities, we will watch where they are because they're great geochemists. And, I'll give you an example. We declared a resource 2 years ago, which has now grown to about nearly 4 million ounces. 2 years ago, we had 4,000 artisanal miners on there. Once we sat with them and explained to them that we want to start doing our work in there, they just moved on to the next section. So we're now looking at the section they've moved on to. So we've got a great symbiotic relationship with them.
I hope you paid them a finder's fee.
Is this recorded?
Sorry, Martin, very briefly, as you can see, we've got...
Egypt, fine. West Africa, large artisanal part of the economy. If we've got to engage, we'd rather a bit like sort of farming, pastoral animal grazing. If we can coexist and leave them in place, best approach. If you have to move them, we think about livelihood restoration. Can we move them to another area and provide alternative means of income? Where you get the kind of semi-mechanized industrial artisanal camps that are maybe funded offshore by other actors, I think that's more of a national interest issue that you involve government with.
Ladies, gentlemen, apparently gold has got some useful, I don't know, but so we've been told by this panel. Thank you very much. Always very entertaining to talk about gold, and Anna, deal with your issues. I'm not all bad, okay? Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.